I'm going to talk about two things. One, what can be done in present time, and also we should start thinking about future as well. What should be the sustainable development goals activities, climate change, environment. My background is in health economics, so I'm going to talk more from the research perspective. And when we are deciding about policy within the constituency, it should be based on data driven, or based on evidence, whether a particular policy has worked in a particular context in the village or not. And if a policy has not worked, then we should not be implementing or re-implementing the same policy all the time. So in 2019, one Indian won the Nobel Prize in economics. It's a couple. The wife is a French lady, Esther Duflo. The Indian economist, he is a professor of economics at MIT, Abhijit Banerjee. They won the Nobel Prize in 2019, working at MIT in economics. And they wrote a book. The title of the book is Poor Economics. It's a very inexpensive book. You can buy this for 300 rupees. And in that book, they talk about health and low-hanging fruits. They talk about two things. They say that poverty is widespread. If you look at India, almost about 18 to 20% people are below poverty line. There are many reasons why people are poor. There could be lack of jobs, lack of employment, lack of ambitions. But he highlighted that health is another important factor that leads to poverty. And as a policymaker or government, they are not spending enough resources on health sector. So if you look at India, in India, about 2 to 3% of the GDP is spent on health. So he talked about the importance of health. So in future, if you want to reduce poverty, abolish poverty, or anti-poverty policy, health could be one of the important factors. The second thing he talks about in that book is he calls this as low-hanging fruits. Low-hanging fruits means if there's a tree and there are many fruits, some of the fruits are low-hanging, so you can go to the tree, you can pluck that fruit without getting a ladder or without spending too much resources. So they mentioned in the book that within the health sector, there are many important interventions, many important welfare programs that can be implemented, will be effective at a very low cost. The policymakers, legislators do not need lots of money, lots of resources, because many times we hear we cannot implement this policy because we do not have the money. There is no money from the center. But I'm briefly going to talk about some of the health interventions which have been very useful in other countries. And they are not very expensive. They are not very. They're very cheap. So that is the meaning of low-hanging fruit. So, for example, clean drinking water. You would agree that in many constituencies, not all the households, 100% of the households, they have access to clean drinking water. You can also think of sanitation, the toilet, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and toilet construction program. The government of India has implemented that program. But still, India is known as open defecation capital of the world. And the goal of the Prime Minister is to make India OD free, open defecation free. So we are doing worse even compared to African countries in terms of openly defecating in the field. In my research, based on primary data, what I have found, even in the villages, a household may have toilet in the house, but they are not using it. So as a legislature, I would urge you and request you to convince your people in the constituency to use the toilet and advise them and make them aware that if they are not using the toilet, it will have negative impact on the health of the children. The biggest impact is on diarrhea. If the households are not using sanitation, the kids from 0 to 5 years old, they are more likely to have diarrhea. And diarrhea is one of the biggest reasons, the third important reasons for child mortality. Okay? So if we want to reduce child mortality, improve children's health, then we need to reduce the incidence and prevalence of diarrhea. And that can be easily done by providing clean drinking water and use of toilet. The other important health intervention I would like to highlight, which is also based on my research, and not much focus has been given to this topic, is called iron deficiency. It's called anemia. The recent data I have seen is almost about 60% of 0 to 5 years old children, they are suffering from malnourishment or iron deficiency. The number is higher even for pregnant women. So in terms of focus, my request and my urge to you is to identify the 0 to 5 years old children in your constituency and the pregnant women, and make sure that Government of India has a fantastic program. It's iron and folic acid program. Whether it's reaching the Anganwadi centers or A&M, that is a problem. Implementation is a problem. But if you empower the Anganwadi centers in your village, in your constituency, they are the delivery platform to give the iron and folic acid, that will have big impact in the next 20, 30 years on the health of the children. And through health, we are tempted to think that health is one factor, but health is multidimensional. Health also affects education. Health also affects human capital. Health also affects the employment and the wages of the people. If a child is unhealthy, if he's sick most of the time, he will be missing schools. Even if he goes to school, his attention span, what the teachers are teaching, he would not be able to gather those information. So we need healthier child in the school to make this country proud and great again. We need pregnant women anemia-free. Because if a pregnant woman is anemic or suffering from some sort of micronutrient deficiency, she is more likely to give birth to anemic child. So there will be intergenerational transfer of poverty and poor health from mother to children. Okay, so we need to break that cycle as well, and for that reason, I think in my mind, the two important groups in terms of age is children from 0 to 5 years old and pregnant women. We talk about a lot of time that policies in India, they fail in terms of implementation, but there is one success story. So you may have heard about this Janani Suraksha Yojana program, JSY. In India, it used to be only 40% of women would deliver in the hospitals. The rest of the delivery, birth of the children would happen at home. And most of the women, they would die or the children die. But Janani Suraksha Yojana is a success story where institutional delivery, births in the hospital has gone up to almost 85%. So we can again empower the Anganwadi centers for the pregnant women to have more antenatal care, go to the public health centers and consult doctors during the 9 months of pregnancy. So referring back to that book also talked about, if you think about the problems in your constituency, you may be thinking that, oh, there are too many problems, I cannot solve these problems. This is beyond my scope of resources. But the book talks about that pick one problem and try to solve that problem. So if in your constituency, if you think about the welfare of children, just pick the problem related to children or anemia and just try to solve that problem in next 3 to 4 years. Your approach in terms of making success should also be, I'm an economist, is data-driven. So please, if a researcher comes to your constituency, wants to collect some data, please support that researcher. Please support the data collection activity, because the policy making and implementation should be data-driven and evidence-based. Very quickly, you may have heard about Anemia Mukt Bharat. It's a big program by the Government of India, but yesterday's session, some of the MLAs said they are not aware of this. In Anemia Mukt Bharat, the double fortified salt, namak, and fortified rice are being provided by the government. Please make sure that in your constituency, the PDS, the public distribution shops, they are getting the salt and the rice. And finally, I would like to talk about two things. There was lack of data at the constituency level. So if you want to know that what is the health status of people in my constituency, 5 years ago you would not know that because there is no data. The data you would have 5 years ago was at the district level. But now a group of professors and researchers at Harvard, they have estimated health data at constituency level. So there is a website, you can go there at Harvard University, you put the name of your constituency, you will get a series of data on health about in your constituency. So you can use that data, the constituency level data, to track, monitor the progress of the intervention or the policy you are taking in your constituency. How to do it? Based on research in other countries, the success story is that it has to be a joint effort of the people and the legislature. If only legislatures and policymakers are implementing policy, it will not work. So you have to involve the people in the joint decision-making process. When the people are involved, then only the success happens. Very simple story. In Rajasthan, the vaccination rate among children was so low that the government was concerned about that. It was 30%. Only 30% of children were vaccinated. And that is very important for survival of children. These two people, the Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee, what they did is that they told the households and the women that if you come to the hospital and vaccinate your child, so in that project, if the households were receiving 1 kilogram of dal, lentils, then the vaccination rate went up from 30% to 70%. So small intervention nudge to the household will be very effective. And I'll conclude by saying that we should also start thinking about the future. We should think about the sustainable development goals. The climate change, as the Vice President, former Vice President Venkaiah Naidu ji said, it's real, it's going to affect the welfare of our children in the future time.